ALS is a disease where you slowly lose the ability to use your muscles. People don't know what ALS is and how serious it is, so we decided to film a real person with ALS, Shelley Hoover. She's famous, she's motivational, and she doesn't let ALS slow her down. We emailed her through email and we talked a little bit, we got to know each other, and then we planned a day to actually meet. Well, she shared how she created awareness and how she went out to public and she gave speeches, and she goes to Senate offices every single day to discuss this matter. And she also helps raise money to find a cure for ALS. And even though she might not be the one that tests out the cure, she wants to make sure that other people with ALS will have a chance to live. Every 90 minutes, somebody is diagnosed with ALS, and every 90 minutes, someone loses the fight with ALS and they can't hold it anymore. People with sicknesses like ALS and diseases, they're still the same people like us, so you shouldn't treat them any differently than they are. Hi, my name is Maggie. I am in Oak Hill Elementary, and my video is creating awareness for ALS.
Hi, I'm Alaina.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we are going to talk to a special person named Shelley Hoover who has the disease ALS. ALS is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Shelley Hoover is a motivational person who sadly has the disease ALS and is raising money not for herself, but to find an effective cure for ALS.
For those who don't know what ALS is, it's a progressive motor neuron disease where the communication from the brain to all the voluntary muscles just slowly die, and then the muscles atrophy. So mine started in my legs, and my feet weren't responding, and I kept falling down. So I went to the doctor, and it took almost a year to figure out what was going on. It's a really hard disease to diagnose. But slowly, what happens with ALS is people lose control of all their voluntary muscles, which includes walking, using your hands, rolling over in bed, talking, eating, and eventually breathing. That's when most people will die because they can't control their lungs anymore.
Why do you work so hard to create awareness for ALS?
Well, there's lots of reasons that I want to create awareness for ALS. The more people who know about it, the more chance we have of raising funds for research. And my very life depends upon us finding an effective treatment or a cure for ALS, because right now we don't have one.
In what ways do you create awareness?
I think, but the biggest thing I do for advocacy is once a year I go to Washington, D.C. I've gone twice now. This year will be my third year. And I sit down with senators and people from Congress and their staff and ask them for money for research, money for the Department of Defense to fund research, and for awareness, because without the money to fund the studies, we won't find that treatment.
What do you want people to know about ALS?
What people need to know about ALS is that there is no effective treatment or cure. It's 100% fatal, because you get to the point where you can't eat or breathe, you can no longer live. So I want people to know about ALS so they can vote to encourage their congresspeople or talk to them about getting more money and awareness, because the more people who know and are aware, the greater chance we have of finding a cure. They're estimating there's about 30,000 people alive with ALS at any given time, and there's about 5,000 people diagnosed a year. But there's not a lot of people with the disease because most people don't live very long. In fact, half the people who are diagnosed with ALS die within about less than 2 years. So I'm really one of the lucky ones because I have a slow progression.
What was your reaction when you started having symptoms and were diagnosed with ALS?
At first it was just a shock, kind of disbelief that this really can't be happening. They must have made a mistake. And so it's a grief process. It's coming to terms with loss, but it's on a continual basis. But I was very shocked. Of course, my family was very sad to hear that there was nothing they could do to help me.
How did you stay positive and upbeat after you were diagnosed with ALS?
It comes down to a couple things. One is my faith is very important to me, so I have a lot of hope that on this life God has a purpose for me, and when I die my life will just be different, but I'll still have a wonderful life. So my faith has been a real important part of that. And I think part of it too is if I do have a shortened life expectancy, like if I want to be here another 50 years, but I may only be here another 2 or 3, I want to make the most of those 2 or 3 years, right? And I don't want to be miserable, and I don't want to make the people around me miserable. It's learning how to grieve and learning how to daily deal with loss. And so you acknowledge that it's painful, right? And I might cry, I might throw things, get frustrated, get mad, and kind of let off some steam. And then, but I don't want to get stuck there. I say, you know what, today's a good day, and so we're gonna get up and make it a good one. So I would rather be happy and spread joy and hope and encouragement while I'm still here.
Yeah. When you started having ALS, what did you really lose?
For everything that I've lost in terms of mobility, I've gained 1,000 times in friendships and really seeing how beautiful people really are, right? And how we can love and support each other as humans, where it gives me time to pause and really think about those things and how important they are.
Just to slow down life.
Right. And what really is important, right? It's our relationships with our family and our loved ones and our friends and coworkers that really matters the most.
Yeah. Why are you the one that creates awareness for ALS? I mean, there are lots of people with ALS, so why are you the one?
I want to be a voice for those who have lost their voice. Some people with ALS, the first thing they lose is their voice, and they can't talk anymore, and it's really hard to communicate with electronic devices. So I still have a voice, and I want to be a voice for those who aren't as fortunate as I am to have all the support that I have, a great family system and social support.
We recently researched the clinic drug trials for ALS. Do you participate in any of these trials?
I have, yes, I have in the past. There's a long process through the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, that drugs have to go through, and there's all different phases of trials, and they're looking at different things. The drug trials that I can participate in are called phase 1 trials that are the first time going into humans. Because they're not really looking at efficacy yet, they're just looking at safety. So my hope is to be the first human to participate in that trial. And even though it will take another 10 years probably for the FDA to approve the medication, if it does work, it's a way that I can help those who will come behind me by participating in those trials.
Are there any drugs out there that are not available to ALS patients but they might work?
Yes, that's a really good question, and a lot of my efforts in advocacy are reaching out to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, asking them to move a little more quickly. So there are drugs that are in phase 2 and phase 3 of the FDA approval process that show a lot of hope. There's a lot of work going on in stem cell trials. I know of a patient who was in a wheelchair like me, participated in a stem cell trial and was up chasing his dog in the yard, right? So there's lots of hope, but we can't access the medications to the general people with ALS until it's gone through the entire FDA process, which costs about $2.6 billion to get a treatment through the approval process. So it's very expensive and takes a very long time.
What do you want people to do about ALS?
I want people to find a cure. So we have to get really smart, intelligent young people like you excited about working in neurology and labs. We want people to continue to fight for a cure, continue to advocate for those who are without, to make sure they have the equipment that they need. Most people before the Ice Bucket Challenge a few years ago had never even heard of ALS, right? And now we have a lot more money for funding, a lot more awareness. So the more people know about it, the better, because we'll be one step closer to a treatment.
What is your current goal? What are you planning on doing next?
My most important thing is just to be thankful and grateful that I have another day. And so I want to tell everybody how much I love them, the people who are important to me, because that's what matters most. My next 2 steps in awareness for ALS and advocacy is I hope to participate in this drug trial in the spring for this brand new molecule that was really hopeful to slow some of the progression. And then the second thing, my husband and I will be driving to Washington, D.C. in May to participate in the Advocacy Day, where we'll go on Capitol Hill and talk to senators and congressmen. Because it's easy for them to read about ALS or hear about ALS, but when I show up in their office, a real patient who has the disease, it makes it a more immediate, concern for them.
Is there anything else you would like to share to help your awareness effort?
Well, first I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and helping me spread awareness. You guys are a big part of that. I think my final message would be that if we can learn anything from this tragedy or learn anything from suffering for people who are suffering, is to live each day to your best and to make sure that the people around you know how much you love them and appreciate them, and not to take anything for granted, even as simple as just jumping off that chair. Don't take that for granted, because we have so much to be thankful for.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and all that you do to support ALS.
We're really thankful that you could come and share with us your
Thoughts and opinions.